Before, after, before, after.
They turned out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Hi, Tim.
Hi, Ryan. Hi, Sixto.
That's, for those who don't know, that was my my cat Tim was saying hello to. So, okay, so I've said hello to you. You've said hello to me. You've said hello to my cat. I've said hello to... Oh, right. I got to say hi to you listening. That's what's next. Hello, you listening. Thanks for being here. Welcome. This is Dismembering Horror, episode 112 of Dismembering Horror, in fact.
That's a lot of episodes.
Really is. A lot of horror movies. I mean, well, what, 111,
Yep.
in fact. Yeah, we don't count episode 100. We just looked back. Anyways, Dismembering Horror. What is it? Who are we? What is this? Who are you? Dismembering Horror. It's the podcast show where myself, Ryan McDuffie, and
Myself, Tim Aslin.
we dismember a horror film every week, from our mouths to your ears, from our essence to your visage. We talk about what worked, what did not work, and anything else we may have found interesting or noteworthy about, you guessed right, a horror film. Ones that we've been wanting to revisit, ones that we've always wanted to see, ones that have been recommended to us. We love the ones that you've submitted to us. Or in the case of this episode, because if you're listening to this when it's new, it is the month of October, the year 2020. We want to keep up the tradition and having some sort of like themed, for October, we use as an excuse these last 2 years to cover a series. So last year was the Psycho movies, all four Psychos with Anthony Perkins. And this year is When the Devil in the Rain.
Oh, you think that's like the memorable thing from these movies?
That's right. I know you immediately knew what I was talking about. Scream, and we're on to Scream 2 today. It is. It's like the song. It's like when that song comes on in these movies, you're like, yeah, Scream. It's happening.
I guess.
With the red right hand. That was my favorite part of the last one when he closed the door to the beat of the song. Right. It's so good. But yeah, trucking along. Scream 2 out of 4. It was this was the one I hadn't seen the longest ago. You know what I mean?
For the longest time. Billy Joel style.
Right. I had completely forgotten who the killers were. I think all I remembered was I kind of remembered the car scene of them having to crawl over Ghostface to escape the locked car.
Yeah.
And then I remember that Randy dies. That's it.
Yeah. I may have I think I've seen this one twice. Once in the theater. I'm almost certain I saw this one in the theater as well, because I have this memory of that moment after they crawl over him in the car.
Uh-huh.
Of thinking to myself, why don't they just take the fucking mask off and then run away? Identify and run away, right? What are we doing? And then they actually call that out in the movie right after I had the thought. And I always remember that moment of being cool, a movie where they actually are kind of ahead of the audience. They're anticipating what the audience is going to think. Not that the first one didn't do that, but it seemed more poignant for some reason in that moment in this one to me. And I'm almost certain I saw it a second time, but like you, it's been probably since the year after it came out that I've seen this one.
Wow. Fresh on renting it on VHS Pan and Scan, probably.
Oh God, probably. Awful. So I remembered kind of vague aspects of it, but was very surprised by a lot of stuff. In particular, the cast.
Yeah.
I was just like, every fucking time you meet a new person, I was like, holy shit, that's this person, and that's this person, and that's this person.
Right.
It's like, I forgot all about all that.
Yeah. Portia de Rossi. Didn't even know who she was probably when I last saw this. Like,
Right.
Great. Well, Tim, I'm so excited to get into it. So do you want to get into it and start with the trailer for Scream 2?
Sure.
All right, here we go. As I've said it, as you know, I'm going to say it again, from 1997, right after 96 when the first one came out. We are back with Scream 2.
Let's get down to business. The way I see it, someone's out to make a sequel. You know, cash in on all the movie murder hoopla. So it's our job to observe the rules of the sequel.
What are you talking about?
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to make a successful sequel. Number 1, the body count is always bigger. Number 2, the death scenes are always much more elaborate. Carnage, candy. And number 3, never, ever, under any circumstances, assume the killer is dead.
How did we find the killer, Randy? That's what I want to know.
Well, let's look at the suspects. There's the obvious boyfriend, Derek.
So you think it's Derek?
Not so fast. Forget the boyfriend. It's tired. Who else do we got?
There's...
Mickey, the freaky Tarantino film student. But if he's a suspect, so am I. So let's move on.
Actually, looks like that was the home video release trailer that we watched.
Apparently.
Whatever, we'll go with it. I remember seeing this and really liking this that little teaser trailer because it's great. It's just that scene's great. It does everything you need.
It's the same scene as the first movie, and it happens almost exactly at the same point in the movie. It's the midpoint of the movie.
Except this, you mean like the video store scene in the first one?
Where Randy calls it.
Yeah, I love it. This one, they're eating Baskin Robbins ice cream.
Yeah,
they have their little 31 flavors cups. Great. Scream. Well, Tim, per our rating system, would you tell yourselves, would you tell yourself regarding Scream 2, all the Tims, would you tell the Tims to avoid Scream 2, stream it, rent it, or buy it?
I think I would still buy it.
Woo!
Because the first one, it's a very good sequel. It does all the things that they basically are explaining in that trailer of more kills, like bigger scenes, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It pretty well does that. I don't have a ton of like problems with it. There's a couple things that we'll talk about that I'm sort of like, I think could have been done better maybe, but all in all, it's pretty comparable to the first one. Like in general, it's solid continuation of that world without feeling like a letdown at all.
Right. If you can look at it as like, oh no, this is what you want, is it for not to be, you want it to be a sequel, and it tells you exactly what a sequel should be, and it does it. I think this movie, okay, I'll give it, I got to give it a buy it too. I was really impressed with it, actually. I thought it was like on par with the first one, and just sort of, as you said, just continuing to do the Scream thing, do it well.
Self-aware in the right way, like addresses things that we actually said we had sort of, I mean, not really big issues, but we made note of
right
in the first one. It kind of like just deals with them.
Well, yeah, I just think it's so smart in, when I say doing the Scream thing, I guess that's a lot of things, but the one I'm thinking of right now, it's like knowing where the audience is at, and then meeting them right there, and then pulling that rug out from under their feet so you can still engage with it, like with the sort of intensity of a horror movie.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you really step back, it's basically the exact same movie, structurally.
Right, but like, what else would it be?
Right? Like, well, what I mean is they didn't reinvent the wheel. They took the things that were working and they just redid the story beats and like the structural beats, but they kind of shuffled the deck a little bit, but it's pretty much right down the middle of the same basic movie.
I mean,
but like it manages to be a totally different movie. It's
Right.
really interesting, right? Like we could just sort of go down the line.
I mean, you could even say that how it's being a slasher film too, not just a Scream sequel too.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's like let's see. The relationships are all basically the exact same. New faces, but like filling in the spaces of those new faces with new faces.
Right. The right mix of old and new.
Yeah. All of the same essential things happen. The catharsis or the climax is almost exactly the same in sort of structure. It's like there are two killers. There is a savior who you least expect to be the savior. Like all of the sort of nuts and bolts of the first one are there. But because they reframed everything with new characters and a new place, I guess,
and it being
really
the sequel,
works.
Yeah,
It just sort of works.
It being the self-aware meta sequel, like that's the Scream thing too. Cool,
but actually, I mean, I guess I'm already getting into the things that work now. Sorry.
Yeah,
let's do a summary.
Exactly. Then we can get to what worked. So. Summary. It is Nev, our gal, Nev Campbell, Sydney Prescott. She's in college now. It's great. We learned she's a theater kid, too. So that was fun. And it's in... Is it supposed to be California? Did she go off somewhere for school? I feel like she went off somewhere for school. I forget what it was supposed to be.
I think it's still California. I mean, the first one is California. It's just Northern California.
So maybe she's in Southern California now.
Yeah. I mean, we can talk later about the filming locations too, but yeah.
Whatever. I don't know why I started with that.
It's sort of it's a pretty standard college campus vibe. It does particularly have a bit of a Southern California feel to it. But yeah, like the characters finally fit their age group. That's nice. And so it's a bunch of college people. And right away we established that Gail's taken quite a lot of advantage of the story, created a book which has spawned a movie version of the book called Stab.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the intro. We know now we are in a world where a film, which is basically the Scream movie, this is where the movie just is so good. There's it's Stab is this it's the Scream within the Scream. It's the movie within a movie, based on the murders from the first film.
Yep, that's a really really good way to. I don't know. It's got that meta thing where, because we've already established, I think that's probably the best like added layer.
It's the only way to do a Scream sequel, Right. It's brilliant.
Because you're going to have, like you have, Randy and Sydney are at the same college now, and we meet the sort of cast of similar characters, but they're cohorts in college, like boyfriends and friends and such. And
right. So where she's at, she has a new boyfriend, Jerry O'Connell.
Yeah.
So that's sort of like, that's kind of her main character story through it, is sort of working through her trust issues based off of the first one, of having her boyfriend in the first one turn out to be the murderer.
But of course, because so a new ghost face, copycat killer, shows up and kills somebody. Oh, actually, it says right here in the Wikipedia, it's a fictional Windsor College in Ohio.
Interesting.
So they traveled all the way from California to go to college in Ohio.
It seemed that's
that's cool, because that really establishes that it's not coincidental, right?
Yeah,
that they are the new Ghostface killer is in the town that she specifically is in. So that's a big deal.
I
didn't really catch that.
Yeah, they're all on high alert.
Yeah. So of course, a copycat killer showing up and doing this is a big deal for her, and Randy, and it gets our previous cast back in town, into the new town with Gail and Dewey. They're the only two from the first one, right? It's the four of them total. Yeah,
our core four.
Randy, Sydney, Dewey, and Gail.
Woo, woo, woo.
And then you get kind of what you would expect, right? Like,
and Cotton at a certain point.
That's right. So yeah, Cotton is now he's around.
Yeah, not so much a big player in the first one, but just as far as
but an interesting sort of character in that he really is trying to bank on his 15 minutes of fame, and that's his whole motivation is to get some I don't know, what do you call that? Some airtime.
He feels he is owed for his year of wrongful imprisonment.
Yeah,
and for its after effects. He's very scarred, Cotton, by being wrongfully accused. But as he says, people still look at him as if he did it.
Yeah. And then you get your twists and turns, and who could it be? The whole movie is very much like just the same sort of thing. They even do the same, show somebody's feet and then cut to another person and they're wearing similar shoes, and it's yeah, we get it. That's the thing.
Yeah,
it could be anybody. It's probably not the person you just alluded to it being,
right?
Which they do a lot with Jerry O'Connell's character in particular, which I think is good because we're trying to kind of be in Sydney's headspace.
Yeah.
But it all culminates with us finding out, and Sydney finding out, that it's another student who's a friend of theirs, played by Timothy Oliphant. Whatever. Elephant. And Laurie Metcalf, who is... What's her character's name?
She's just Laurie Metcalf.
Well, she has multiple characters. So she's been pretending to be a reporter, a local reporter, but in actuality, she is the estranged mother of Billy.
Right. So Mrs. Loomis going under the alias Debbie Salt, small town reporter.
Right. And
so we hope you've seen this. If not, that's fine. But Tim, since this is the summary section, and a big part of it is just plugging into how we viewed this. I don't know if this would necessarily go in what worked, even though it could. I just want to know, what was your experience watching as far as thinking, who was the killer at any given point, or what was going on?
So I completely forgot that it was Timothy Oliphant as one of the two. I was I'm pretty sure I remember Laurie Metcalf being the killer, but I had forgotten completely that she was Billy's mom. That. I just was oh, what's her angle? She's a reporter. Was she just trying to get a good scoop, and she created this whole thing to just be the next Gail?
Yeah.
So I was I know it's her, but then when it's oh, Mrs. Loomis, I was oh, fuck, of course. Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, I was not, I went into the final act being fuck, I don't remember. And this is actually kind of exciting.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if Jerry O'Connell's character was in on it, and then he gets shot, and I was shit, wait, is Timothy Oliphant just nuts and he shot his partner? I was completely lost, actually.
Cool.
Up to that point, other than knowing Laurie Metcalf was a part of it. I was pretty taken by surprise, and that was nice.
Yeah.
To say the least. And the Cotton angle, I was pretty confused by. I knew he that's the thing, is I had this vague memory of the characters that were around in the theater. That was sort of in my brain, but I couldn't remember who was who or what actually the outcome was. So that was fun.
Cool. I had completely forgotten who it was. So it was. You can imagine how exciting it was when it was.
I spent a lot of the movie actually thinking it was Dewey.
No, I knew. I mean, I knew who it wasn't in the sense. So I'm caught up where I feel like you're totally blind. I know you're totally blind on Scream 4 and mostly Scream 3. I
know that there's like a hay bale or a barn or some shit in Scream 3. That's like the only image in my head that I remember.
Wait, so did you know with this one did you think Dewey was actually killed when he was stabbed?
Yes.
That must have been so heartbreaking.
Well, I remember thinking...
It was, even knowing.
I remember thinking, oh yeah, this is one of the scenes that I really remember, but I didn't remember why I remembered it. And then he got killed. And I was like, oh, that must be why I remember it so well, because Dewey gets killed. Shit.
I just could not imagine him being the killer. Like, for some
reason in my head, I
far-fetched.
was like, this whole thing that they were doing with his limp and whatever, I was like, wait, did this come out after Usual Suspects? Is this they're doing like kind of a nod to Kaiser Soze kind of thing with him? I was like, shit, maybe that is what happens. I was pretty lost.
So just this will be whatever, something the things of note. This was an early example of a script leaking out online. So
really?
So they completely changed who the killers were. And then even up to like, even if you were involved in the production, they were putting out different versions and stuff like that, and only planned on the day of shooting the actual like newly come up with ending or whatever.
Jesus.
But so like one of the versions that went out there to people did indeed have like Dewey as one of the killer or one of the killers. So there's a way to write it. I'd just be so curious how they, to read that version. But no, since I had completely forgotten, you can imagine how just wonderful and fun it was with, surprising it was with Mrs. Loomis in the form of Laurie Metcalf showing up. Mm-hmm. She's just like so good. Just her giving that monologue at the end is so much fun. And then I feel like Timothy Oliphant as Mickey. It's I don't know. I don't want to say I guessed it, because the whole time I was just like him and Jerry O'Connell, I was equally just like so suspicious of,
Totally.
But I feel like, yeah, Timothy Oliphant, I don't know. He struck me the hardest as like, I'm pretty sure, like if I had to put money on it.
Well, it's kind of the same thing as the first one too, right? Like the guy you most expected, the most sort of character, like the essence of that actor is he's a pretty like sinister and like distrusting faced guy. Right? Like of all the people, and that's exactly how it was in the first one, right? Like fucking what's his nut? We look at his face and we go, "Ooh, yeah, no, something's up with that guy."
You're watching a Scream movie, so you go, "Oh, well, that's just intentional."
That is the
everyone's
beauty of
suspicious,
it. Right?
Well, let's if you have that's the beauty of it. Let's get into what worked.
All right.
Here we go. Scream 2. What worked?
What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked for you?
Just to point out, I don't know how intentional this was in terms of like trying to confuse or like sway the audience one way or the other. But in the sequence where Ghostface goes after Sydney for the first time, so it's just after Sarah Michelle Gellar has been killed, I believe. And yeah, I think that's right. And then, because it's at that sorority house. So Sydney gets chased around the house. Not Billy, fuck. What's Jerry O'Connell's fucking name? Derek or something like that?
Derek.
Yeah. So Derek pops up, runs inside, gets cut, but it's like a convenient wound. Ghostface gets away. Everybody sort of shows up and everybody's like suspicious of everybody.
Yeah.
In that
including
scene,
Sydney, yeah.
Right. In that scene, every suspect that they show, I believe, is wearing the same colored blue shirt. They all have different shirts on, right? But like Jerry O'Connell has this it's sort of a baby blue checkered shirt, and or maybe Dewey's got the checkered one. Jerry O'Connell has like the polo. Timothy Oliphant has like a sort of a sweater. I think Randy is in that scene. He's got a blue. Like, I think everybody who you kind of are wondering who it could be, they're all wearing the same color. I don't know if that's just the costume department was like, this is our palette, let's put all the guys in this color, or what, but it changes after that. So I don't know. I thought it was an interesting, possibly very cool like thing that for me, I was like, that is fun and exciting to try to look for clues within the design of these big scenes. And I think there's a lot of little things like that throughout the movie that are just good. Like first of all, maybe I should backtrack. The opening scene calling out, having two black actors literally call out the lack of black or people of color in the first movie and like just calling it out right at the top. That's the thing I was talking about in the last movie, where it's like you got to have characters who hang a lantern on those things that the audience are thinking, and they just do it right out the gate, which I love. Of course, they both get killed, so that sort of carries on that trope. But you know, the cameraman being black, the best friend being black, like having it being more diverse, not totally diverse, but more, was a good step forward. And obviously they were thinking about it. So I really appreciated that. I love that the cameraman is like, he doesn't get killed because he does something stupid. He just leaves. He's like, I'm done with this. Bye. Like, he's the smartest person in the whole movie.
Yeah.
He gets the fuck out of there. So I just like little things like that. I love. I don't know. There's so many of them. It's sort of where do you even begin?
I don't think they're little. I feel like you went from saying a little thing to a big thing, which was little thing is the blue people wearing. Like, you know, it's there. It's a fun little detail. I listened to the commentary. It sounded like they were absolutely aware of it. I don't know like how. I think it was like not. They weren't too crazy force about, but just kind of something that arose. Because one of them was like, ended up going with a lot of blue, everyone in blue, working with that. But like what you said about starting off with having black characters talk about the lack of black people in the previous one, just to start, I mean, in order with what I have, like what I loved so much, what worked for me, the opening scene, and that's like what I was talking about when I said how it's got to meet the audience where it's at in order to then pull us into it as a horror movie again, you know, doing both at once. So like immediately start with that critique of the first one, puts us right where, you know, that's again meeting us where we're at, and then combine that with the other, it's the two things, it's that and that the opening scene doing, and the way it's commenting on making us confront the idea of glorifying violence or reveling it, celebrating it, whatever the unique to horror response is. And I love how they just turn it up to 11 for this movie, where it's like ushers are like having like Ghostface fly around, like everyone's screaming like with their fake like glowing knives and everything.
Did you notice what theater we were in?
It was the Egyptian theater down the street.
No, it's the Vista. It's the one in my neighborhood.
Oh, because they're both Egyptian themed.
Yep, they are. I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, this is the Egyptian, isn't it? But I had to look it up because I was like, wait a minute, that might be the Vista. I feel like I've never been in the Egyptian. I've been in the Vista many times. So I looked it up. It is the Vista.
Oh,
I was very excited.
I forget that that's so cool.
They both have the same kind of decor and vibe to them for sure. But yeah.
But probably my two favorite theaters in
LA.
my
God. So good.
Anyway, but yeah, that just brought me like right in to have those two elements, and just it puts you in a space. I'm trying to think like what is going on with meta. It like
It's
it puts you in a place where there's no easy answer to anything, you know?
Well, the thing that there's so much going on in that scene. There's critique, right? Like outward critique of the first movie from the characters in the movie. But then they're watching a very clearly like shitty version of the first movie with like Heather Graham as Drew Barrymore's character, right? Like great, but like even in the how that the movie Stab is shot, there's nuance in that it's just not as good as Scream, right? Like it's a movie in a movie about the previous movie.
It makes us immediately move on from it in a way. It like it calls itself out. So yeah.
God damn it. It's really fucking good.
What all that adds up to for me is then when Jada Pinkett is killed in front of everyone and everyone thinks it's an act and she goes up right in front of the screen and dies, and the way like all the audio cuts out and we just hold on her, like
people start taking their ghost face masks off,
right? It's
very good.
It was truly just chilling and like affecting, like God, and that's what we come for this. So it's just how brilliant to make it so with the start of this sequel to actually not just being a direct continuation, but actually still being able to deliver by and doing that by commenting on the first one, which is where we're at. Oh, it's so incredible. Again, meets us at our level, meets us where we're at.
Well, and then to carry on, like the next scene, we see Sydney in her new sort of status quo, which is great. And then she has to be reminded of this, you know, that, oh shit, this is happening. But what I really appreciate is the following scene, which is the film class scene. And they, right again, they head on hit the big question of, are people motivated by the art that they consume? And is that what's the causation of bad behavior? And that debate in the classroom is like a really, really like solid version of that debate. Like you get the different things. You also get the killer literally calling it out in what is it? It's the third scene of the movie, I think.
Yeah.
He basically says that he's the killer. Like he states the theme of his motivation in that scene, which is great.
It also, that scene, just because they're also debating, well, are there any sequels that are actually better than the first one? So it almost just, and Randy's straight up like, sequels are never, the sequels always suck. They're the worst. It immediately like puts you...
That's why he gets killed.
Right. Well, it makes you receptive to I don't know. It just helps you maybe just take off your critic's hat a little bit, and just sort of get on board and have fun with it. When like the filmmakers are like, listen, we're overthinking it the right way,
Right. No, it's really, I just think that the first 15 minutes, 12 minutes of the movie are some of the better sort of like ways to, well, just to address the critical eye and get you on board and get you sort of like to just sit back and relax and enjoy the thing instead of being like, oh, is it going to be as good as the first one?
Yeah, it's just sort of is like, we know, just shut up, just watch, It's like, well, what you mentioned, I want to mention something in that scene you got to, that you mentioned, want to mention something you mentioned earlier with Jerry O'Connell, in that it's pretty soon in it, the scene where Sydney first gets attacked and we don't see Jerry O'Connell get sliced.
Right.
Because it's just as far as an example of what it's doing, why it's so brilliant. Like, of course, okay, so it knows, we know that we're suspecting the boyfriend and that now it's possible in horror movies, thanks to the first Scream, to sort of be thinking of and ruling out as an audience member, are they intentionally giving themselves injuries to fake their innocence? So then, but what's so brilliant is we know, because the movie is showing that to us, we know it is aware of that, which means that it really can go either direction. Because you see what I mean?
Yeah, like at that moment, basically all bets are off completely for the rest of the movie. You just you can't know.
Because since you got what I'm saying. Like
the filmmakers know that they want you to not know.
Yeah.
And they are very purposefully doing things to make you go, wait, why are they holding on Jerry O'Connell, and why is the like ominous music happening 3 times in a row every time a scene ends with him in it? You know, like that's a little heavy-handed, but like they're fucking with us,
that's
right?
It is, because they know it's heavy-handed, which means that could be a technique for throwing us off. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah.
It really is, because in the first movie, they did the same thing with fucking Billy, and he was the fucking killer.
It's kind of like, it's kind of like the Princess Bride, like, did you poison my drink thing? Well, I know you're someone who would poison my drink, which means I put it in it. But you can do that ad nauseum, which is what is what this is essentially doing.
It's almost like filmmakers' devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Like they can just fuck around and be like, well, but what about this?
Right.
Constantly. And they do. And then they have Randy do it on top of that.
So just also getting what we want from a sequel is just kind of the fun of the getting more time with these characters, expanding on them, just of the as far as them as individuals in their interactions. Like great, just having more Randy fan favorite.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the horror fan doing his purpose is great. I was just my favorite character in this one, Tim. Like they found is Dewey. He's just so idiosyncratic and like lovable and interesting and weird, and just like deserves that funny theme song he has. Like so good, and you know his scenes with Gail. He has that like.
You mean the Twin Peaks bass line song that comes in?
It's actually the theme. It's a Hans Zimmer piece to what was it? The film I forget. Broken Arrow. They took it was a temp song that they used from Broken Arrow that they were like, you know what? This just is Dewey's theme. We can't imagine it being anything else. When we first see him, it looks like he was just like dropping out of a plane. He looks so confused, you know, when Sydney sees him.
Drop out of a plane without a parachute, land like crippled by the landing.
Oh yeah, no, his injury. Very, very talk about, you know, increase the endearing factor on him.
Yeah.
But that little monologue, but like that line he like just delivers to Courtney Cox, like where he's basically like he's basically in essence saying is my whole Barney Fife nice guy thing is just an act to better maneuver around, you know, situations. But he says it, you know,
it's so good.
It's
but
great.
That's also part of the nuance. Like I guess here's what here's an overarching way to look at why I think this movie is working so well. And I think it's kind of in the first one, we talked about this too. They're doing it in a slightly different way. So in the first one, we talked about how you have the two killers have very different sort of motivations, right? You have this philosophical motivation of a sort of nihilistic attitude. And then you have the actual, like, and that's, oh shit, what was his name? Seth, Sebastian, Scotty, Stuart. Stu.
Yeah,
we got there. One. Okay, you have him and it's just sort of nihilistic and we're just doing it because we're doing it, right? There's this philosophy version of it. And then you have Billy who's doing it literally for revenge. In a weird way in this movie, all the characters are possessing both of those things all the time. So what I mean by that is Dewey he's by action, like his actual motivation, is potentially incriminating himself, right? Like he's suspicious by his demeanor and his like why he's even there, like the physical actuality of him. And this is true for all, it seems like pretty true for all the characters. It makes us suspect him. But philosophically, he's also saying, I could be a suspect. And there's this, that's not a great way of explaining what I mean, but there's this duality essentially within every character that endears us to them because it's based in actual character motivation, and this philosophical suspicion because their character motivation is somewhat incriminating because we're in a world where anybody could be the killer.
Right. So you're saying, yeah, at any given moment when we tune into the idea that one of them is innocent, we sympathize with them. Yeah.
Yeah. But also go, oh shit, but maybe that's the tell that they could be the bad guy.
Right.
Like Dewey, they call it out, right? Like, I think Randy is like, what's up with the limp? You got stabbed in the back.
Yeah.
Like, it creates this suspicion, and they do it with all of the characters, right? Like, Jerry O'Connell, they do it with, oh, he's a doctor, so he would know exactly how to cut his arm without hurting himself. Okay, now he's a suspect. Like they create this duality, and his whole motivation is kind of this. It's the other side of the coin of Billy. He genuinely cares about Sydney, and we live in a world where this gray area of how what lens you view people through changes how you think that their motives, like where they come from. So Jerry O'Connell, totally genuinely in love with Sydney, but through the lens of, yeah, but the last person who I thought was totally in love with me tried to kill me, completely changes how we view him, and we cannot see him truthfully. We just can't. It's colored by the experience of the first movie. And yet, he's completely innocent. He's tragic. He gets the worst shit end of all of this, right? He's like a totally good dude.
After he sings his heart out in front of
really,
the whole lunchroom.
But like, we because of the experience, we're constantly suspicious of him.
Right.
His behavior, really genuinely beautiful, like loving, caring, concerned behavior, constantly looks suspicious to us.
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
Well,
but that's so good. So that duality of like actuality in motivation versus suspicion from the other lens, or through the other lens from the outside, is creating this constant gray area for everybody. It exists with Cotton. It literally exists. It is manufactured by Laurie Metcalf's character. Right. She actually says she's somebody else.
And what's so cool is it's working on two levels too, because you're kind of describing it on the level of how my own basic human instincts. Am I trusting this person or not? But then it's also operating on our knowledge of movies and slasher movies.
But I think we said this about the last one. So much of what is making the first one work so well is that we care about the characters. They're well formed. They all have very, very specific point of views that we can get behind.
Right.
That's still happening in this one.
Well, I got us this squeeze in. I just want to say my last favorite Dewey moment was when was in that scene that was in the little like teaser trailer that we watched, with just when Randy tells him, "Killer, you could be the killer," and he kind of like, gets offended at first, but then realizes like, "Oh yeah, maybe I am," kind of thing. Yeah. I forget what he says, but just how he plays that.
He's just like, "Good point. Let's move on." Yeah,
he just kind of raises one eyebrow. It's just, I love him.
He does a weird, funny, like 3-beat squint, raise eyebrow, like look away thing.
Yeah,
that's like,
that. Good point. As if he almost like was for just a slight moment, like thinking that maybe he was the killer.
Right.
Like as if,
right.
Oh, maybe I should be a suspect. Dude, like,
exactly.
though, dude. It's so funny.
But would I?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that that's a pretty overarching thing, but character, really, really solid character stuff. And then that allows us to kind of live in the gray area because the whole thing is predicated on you really can't trust anybody.
Well, we talked about the big, great opening. Now, how about that's a good transition to the big, great ending? Because what you're talking about, we aren't the only ones in that position of do we got to trust Jerry O'Connell or not? But Sydney is. I thought, talk about just doing the exact satisfying character end moment screenplay movie thing that you want to do of forcing her into a choice that says something about her whole plight. So we have the confirmed killer, Mickey, the mask off, and then we have Jerry O'Connell. I'm just going to keep calling him that. Derek is up there hanging after his frat prank. But Mickey tells Sydney, no, what does he say? He tells him that he is the killer and he
says he was my partner.
Right.
But he disappeared tonight because he got grabbed by his frat buddies.
Right. So
I had to do this all on my own. I think the lesson is you can never, ever believe the bad guy once he's identified himself as the bad guy. I think that should be like a horror movie rule.
No, but it's just like the thing we were talking about of us, the audience, never knowing who we can, if the movie knows, because then all of a sudden, just by bringing up the very idea, Sydney then thinks, well, maybe that he knows that I would think that because he's a bad guy, he's lying, which is why he's saying it. Like, again, it's that same logic where just by him saying it at all, you just don't know.
So this is, in comic book culture, this is like the constant moment that we get on board with our heroes. It's the impossible choice like moment.
Yeah.
Right. So Superman, does he save Lois or does he save all of humanity? Right. Like you're constantly putting the two biggest problems that he could have into the same boat. They do it with Spider-Man. They do it with everybody, right? What's actually happening and why this is so genius and why we love it so much, if you really break it down into nuts and bolts storytelling, what's happening is you take a protagonist, and good protagonists have an external struggle and an internal struggle. And those two things should be at odds. And usually you watch a character spend most of the movie worrying about their external struggle and ignoring their internal struggle until things come to a head, and those two things intersect at the choice moment, which is this moment.
Yeah.
That's really, really good character storytelling. It's like a long, long history of like, that's how you do protagonists, right? Like that's one of the nuts and bolts rules you get taught of like, hey, things to make sure you've got, like, does your main character have these two things? It could be multiple things, right? Like you can have a whole series of these, but at its core, it's the external and the internal. Hers is exactly that. The external fucking issue is that there's a guy trying to kill her. The internal is, who do I trust?
Right.
Like, who do I at my core believe is truthfully like a good person?
Well, it's more specific than that. It's, can I trust my boyfriend after the last one killed me?
Actually, it's even more.
Tried to kill
it's
me.
even more simple than that. Can I trust my own instincts?
Right. Well, I don't think she knows what they are. Is the thing. That's the struggle.
That's the beauty of it, is that the external fucking conflict has. It's the same thing that what I was saying about the lens that we see things through. That external conflict has colored her ability to believe her instincts.
Mm-hmm.
And we are met with that moment, and she fails the test. Like, she can't do it. And so that's really smart third act work, because then it forces us into, how do I redeem that failure in the next 5 minutes of the story or 10 minutes of the story,
or the next,
whatever.
Or the third one in the trilogy.
Sure, exactly.
Because you got to imagine she's going to be pretty messed up after killing her innocent boyfriend. essentially, or making the wrong choice, you know?
Yes.
So, yeah, she's not going to get over that in the 5 minutes.
A therapist would say it's not her fault. She had no control over that, right? Like,
wait, no. But you remember the line in The Babysitter 2, Tim? Where it's like, I know a therapist, your parents would just tell you it's not your fault, but I'm going to tell you that's fucked up and it's something you're going to have to live with. And it's just some part of life, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The little dude from Babysitter's right.
Yeah. No,
he says, I can't tell you it is your fault, but I can't tell you it's not your fault. But I can tell you it hurts a lot. And that's a pain you're going to have to live with. That's
wow.
He says something like that.
Cole,
you can tell
dropping knowledge.
I told you I was so into Babysitter too.
So yeah, I mean, this is all to say that that's good shit. You don't have to know any of this to enjoy the movie. Yeah. But the movie is enjoyable because of this.
Yeah. I mean, just more stuff on that last set piece. I loved, I mean, yeah, I already kind of mentioned it. Laurie Metcalf's big monologue. Like, you have to have, in order for that to work, the final killer monologue, it's fun and you want it. And they still do it in the Scream self-aware way where it's like it feels silly to just give it to us, but at the same time, we want it. And we're so happy when it's happening. She just kills it. And same thing with Tim, like, you know, when they set up based off of the first one, how, the killer's not dead. When you think the killer is dead, you know, it always comes back for one final jump scare. Well, I knew because we had just watched the first one. I'm like, well, of course they aren't going to do it because, you know, I loved that. And Billy pops up in the first one. Blah! She, you know, shoots him one final jump scare. So I'm like, wait, it just did that thing in this one with not the one that they're looking down at, the killer they're looking down at doing the pop-up, but we have Mickey, who we've kind of forgotten about, is the one who gives us the pop-up jump scare final shootout little moment, gotta kill the bad guy, the big bad.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just so satisfying where it's just doing that thing where it's like, I want it and I almost feel silly for wanting it, but then it gives it to you in that way that's just unexpected. Incredible. And I thought, wait, anything on that?
I was gonna move into the setting, the significance of the setting and all that too.
Hold on that. Just the very last thing about this, how they're defeating the bad guys here on the end. Just another brilliant example of the talking to the audience thing. When we have Sydney. So when Laurie Metcalf, what is it, Mrs. Loomis? She's lying on the ground and we're so trained from, you know, having watched so many slashers over the decades that we, you know, the audience is always yelling about, well, just shoot them in the head. Just make sure they're dead, you know? And maybe we're feeling a little bit of that in this one too, where it's like, just do her, make sure she's dead. So Neve Campbell, Sydney, she does do it, but it's almost like it's like a surprise because it's built a reality where these aren't like monsters, you know, they can't actually, you know, they can die, you know, they don't have superpowers. They're dead, you're dead. So there was something that did feel excessive and unnecessary and sort of maybe cruel in the moment of Sydney shooting her in the head, or just kind of unhinged or unnecessary, let's say. So it did something really interesting, I thought. And it's this little moment where it's sort of saying, hey, audience, we know you're maybe you're thinking this and wanting this, so we're going to give it to you. Aha. Didn't that feel kind of like, was that as good as you made it feel? Didn't you see it like that it was unnecessary and unnecessary the violence? I don't know. It kind of said, I don't know, it's interesting kind of commentary in some way. Or so it just was allowed for a moment of sort of audience self-reflection, I thought.
Yeah. No, I agree that there was something poignant about that. It like was meant, I think Sydney as a character meant it to be cathartic, but it's kind of tragic in its own way. Like we go, Jesus, like that's where we're at. It feels kind of gross.
Yeah.
And that's good, obviously, because then we get the come back to life moment just after that.
Yeah.
Which is great. Or sorry, we
Right
actually
before.
get a really brilliant moment. No. So, wait. God, now I don't remember. She shoots Mrs. Loomis in the head before or after Courtney Cox does her little jump scare coming out of the...
Oh, I think Courtney Cox comes up last. Or maybe they're the ones who are...
Because they both, Courtney Cox and... So Gail and Sydney shoot Mickey.
Oh, right.
Together. So I think the order of events was Courtney Cox. I think we think that Mrs. Loomis is going to come back to life, and Courtney Cox scares us by coming out of the thing. Pull her up, shoot Loomis in the head, think everything's okay, and then Mickey comes up and they both shoot him.
Right.
So it's a really good series of of ways to fuck with you.
Right. Well, just kind of last logistical brilliant thing I thought that they did with that ending was even though we had Gale Weathers like lying down there, and we had Dewey turns out not to be dead, it didn't go for like what the first one did of the the save the day moment where someone who's been injured comes back, saves the day. And it was so cool because what that not only does it, just makes it interesting if you can avoid that because, we already talked about Nev Campbell, Sydney being, put in a position where she has to make the choice. But then same with Cotton Weary, he had to make a choice too in that moment. So just, I don't know. I think by not having the whole someone comes and saves the day thing, they made it so, I don't know, it's just chock full of good little character moments.
I
or
really
big ones.
like Cotton showing up. I think that really, really works. And his confusion as to what's going on gives us this sense of like, we're kind of him in a weird way.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas previously we were more Sydney. I think that there's something really nice about getting his confusion. Well, I think part of what's good about it is that we're still suspicious of him in spite of knowing full well that he has nothing to do with anything.
Right.
Like shit. So
Right.
we're
Well,
kind of
he was
getting
like
gotten by
he was
that.
a jerk. He was a jerk to her earlier.
That's true.
He's very
Yeah.
set up as self-serving and selfish. And he very might as well have been, I think, it plays like he's debating it in the moment where he actually is considering going with killing Sydney in order to achieve, that route of fame.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's interesting.
So what were you going to say? What did you want to say on, because I know we definitely have to talk about it. The end set piece being a theater.
It's really specific, and I think it's fucking great because it doesn't really matter in any grand way, but it's like these little touches of storytelling that are fucking cool. So for one thing, you've got there's a bunch going on. Number one, they're in college. What do we associate with college? Greek life, right? There's sororities. There's this whole thing of like Derek giving her his sorority necklace or his fraternity necklace when they're going steady. So there's all this college Greek like tropes going on, these little nuanced things to get us in that mindset. But then they're doing thematically, they're doubling up on that by creating the theater, that the play that she's in, which is a Greek tragedy. It's Cassandra. But on top of that, we are watching a Greek tragedy, right? Like in its essence, that's essentially what this type of story is. Like Greek tragedies were by and large fucking slashers in and of themselves for that time. Lots of death, lots of blood, lots of like tragedy.
Could you work into what you're saying, how there is an earlier scene of her performing on the stage?
Oh, dude, that scene is so good. So like when she's rehearsing for the play that she's been cast in, which she's been told explicitly by the head of the department or the director of the play or whatever, who I love that actor.
David Warner.
Yep. He's like, this is your role. You are this character. So the character Cassandra is I'll read it to you. This is off of some website. So, okay, according to Aeschylus's tragedy Agamemnon, Cassandra, who was loved by the god Apollo, the sun god, who promised her the power of prophecy if she would comply with his desires. Cassandra accepted the proposal, received the gifts, and then refused the god her favors. So she wouldn't tell him what she would see. And then, so Apollo gets revenge on her by saying that all of her prophecies would never be believed. And then she accurately predicted events like the fall of Troy, the death of Agamemnon, but everybody didn't believe her. And then later she gets raped, which is really awful. Basically because people don't believe her, they're like, oh, she's full of shit. She's not worth anything. And so this, let's see, at the end, blah, blah, blah. She was murdered later by Agamemnon. And then whatever. Like, that's basically, she's super tragic, right? But like this all falls it's really smart for them to pick this particular Greek figure because Sydney, by and large, is never really believed by like the authorities, right? Like, but that's the external thing again. She's at the mercy of these men who want something from her. Like they're all in love with her and they want something from her, and it's like she's being kind of pushed around by them. And then even when she thinks she knows what's up, they're like, nah, like that's bullshit, or like. She's constantly getting men telling her what she needs to do. And so there's a nice overlap in that. I mean, they obviously picked this purposefully and sort of framed things around it that way. But it's just a really good touch, right? Like, it's good to get that. And then it leads us to this moment where she herself, we revert, or we move into her internal way of seeing the world as an effect of all of these things, which is her trying to listen to the director of the play in this particular example and being like, okay, you're right. I can do this. I was meant to be this part. Let me give my performance. And in that performance, she's seeing things. She's seeing Ghostface come after her. You could take that as a one-on-one. She is seeing the prophecy of what's going to happen. Right. And it scares the shit out of her and causes the whole thing to kind of come to a halt. And it like motivates her later to be like, I don't trust anybody. Like, I don't even trust myself. So then we're now in her internal conflict, which is, can she trust herself? So these things are dancing around each other in a really, really nice way that, you know, you don't have to know any of that, and we still get it. Like, we still sort of absorb all of that feeling. I mean, it's obviously why Greek tragedy stories are still kind of around, right? Like, they stand the test of time, right? Like, they're the best stories. Everything's fucking based off of them. And they came from something. Like, they're not the end all be all, right? There were things before them that got us to that. But like, it's just proving the point that like when you are well versed in all of the layers of what goes into good storytelling, you can take a movie like the sequel to a slasher film from the 90s, which ostensibly should be shit, and make really good storytelling. So the Greek stuff, having all of that and weaving all that in, I just think is fucking kind of brilliant.
I mean, I knew as soon as there was a play in the movie that she was in, I'm like, oh my God, Tim's going to get so excited at like whatever this play is and how what the play is has significance for the movie and all that stuff. I just do.
Yeah, I mean, I personally eat that shit up because that's what I came from. But like, it's great.
It's funny because, I mean, I'm glad I could count on you to cover that angle, but talk about the significance of the stage and the theater. Like, my mind goes to what else it's doing, which is just the fact that it is a place of artifice and entertainment, and it's just another level of the meta-ness, the having the story be told on a place where stories are told,
and having her literally cut the ropes that hold up the edifice
Yeah.
with an axe is fucking brilliant.
Right, and it's great when she's getting like blocked in by the walls when they're falling down in front of her. She can't escape. Like it is a play happening.
Oh, the metaphors abound.
And the metaphors.
Oh man,
Great.
I think we can end the show on that. We did
so
it.
long. Yeah, we just had to cover the big beginning, the big ending, everything in between. So good. We already mentioned it. Loved Jerry O'Connell singing his heart out, which was so funny. And again, there's all sorts of twisted things where you're like, oh my God, what if he is the killer and he's he's standing on the table singing in front of the whole school? Like, what a way to get us to kind of try to look the other way.
Well, from an editorialized point of view, too, off topic, sort of, this is why dating is difficult. Right?
Trust?
Because we live in a world where we've seen a lot of stories. We know about serial killers. We know about the horrible things that go on in the real world, and it makes it really hard to trust anybody.
I don't know. Dating's hard for other reasons for me. I already told you I'd be the first to die in the horror movie if it was like a seductress or whatever. Like, I'm gone. Sure, I'll trust you. You're pretty.
Yeah, right. That's
Horrible.
funny. So let's see, what else? I think I have to just say, like, the cast of, like, just every face you see being a recognizable, like, person that I don't know if you had the same experience, but I was like, oh, fuck yeah, I love this person. Oh, they're in this shit. I love them.
It was,
nonstop for the first, like, 20 minutes of the movie. I was like, holy shit.
It was that combined with just the joy of seeing them like deliver for their little section. Like this is Sarah Michelle Gellar's big scene. This is her, scene where she's on the phone with him and to her death scene. By the way, like just talk about some of the deaths in it. The Sarah Michelle Gellar's literal backstab, like that. I felt that. That one hurt. That one was really intense, hard to watch. Again, then gets so great when she gets thrown off the balcony, though, too. And it's like the slow-mo fall, but the scream is not slow-mo. So it's like timed, like, she's really taking that long to fall. I just love that effect.
I didn't really think about this much, but just now I'm having the thought, let's go through who are all the deaths? Let's see. The first one is the first one is Omar Epps, right?
And Jada Pinkett, yeah.
Yeah. He gets it in... Does he get it in the back? Yes. He gets it in the back.
No, he gets it in the side of the head.
In the mouth first, but he's still alive.
Right.
I think he gets it in the back, And then Jada gets it in the stomach mostly.
She gets it a bunch in the theaters,
but she gets it in the back as well. Sarah Michelle Gellar gets it in the back. Let's see. Randy, we don't really see, but he gets grabbed from behind.
Yeah.
Who else dies? The best friend. She gets grabbed from behind.
Scene. Yeah.
Everybody's getting it from behind. Dewey gets it from behind.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's an interesting sort of... I don't know if it has a bigger meaning in any real way, but it does sort of... It speaks to the methodology of the killer. That they kind of don't... They can't do it head on.
I think it was... I see it more as on the film itself versus the killer of just... For whatever reason, it felt right. It worked to have these sort of surprise scares, in a way. I don't know.
I don't know how nuanced those decisions were, but like it's interesting kind of food for thought to me. Like I think it's really effective one way or the other. Like you're saying, like when Sarah Michelle Gellar gets it in the back, we go, ooh.
Right. But like you pointed, it just, I guess why I said when I just thought of like, Randy gets grabbed from behind into the van, and then the roommate friend, Haley, she gets, surprise, jumped out from behind something, grabbed from the back. I just saw that similarity.
Yeah.
I gotta mention, I loved, it was so funny when you have the movie, the first one being remade in this one. So just like seeing Luke Wilson play Billy Loomis, and then
that's right, with a horrible wig on, which is so good.
Right. And then of course the reference to the first one with Tori Spelling as herself, essentially, because Sydney in the first one says, why don't you get Tori Spelling to play me or whatever.
Right.
And they do.
Oh, it's just the meta-ness is really crazy.
Can't take it. I mean, talk about, where the movie tells you exactly what it's doing and does it, just like in the little trailer we watch. More kills, more elaborate, kill scenes. So, I mean, I was relishing in that with the big car scene, the set piece. It's like just how
dude's head.
Right.
Fuck.
The detectives.
Man, does he get it.
But yeah, how big of a scale, like all of a sudden when you're watching it, you feel like, oh man, this is cooler. This is different from the first one. They're using their budget. You have this full on, just like pedal to the metal, people hanging off the front of the cars and then ending in that death of the pull through the head. It's just great. It's like, you know what? This is what I want from the sequel. Thanks for telling me and thanks for delivering.
Yeah. Nah, it's good shit.
Yeah. At first, that theater scene where you kind of touched on it, where we see her rehearsing, and she like is thinking she maybe does or doesn't see Ghostface among them all. At first it seemed so almost like out of place or over the top, but as soon as it just kept going I'm like, no, this is great. This is I was in love with that scene by the end. Just once I realized kind of what it was all doing and that they did just go for it, I thought it was great.
It's operatic. I love that. Like it's bigger scaled storytelling.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Let's do it. And using the college setting. Anyway, clearly we liked this movie. Dare say loved it. Loved enough to put it next to Scream on our shelf. Will Scream 3 and Scream 4 continue that trend, Tim? We shall find out soon enough.
I'm gonna make a prediction, Cassandra style. Nobody will believe me, but my prediction is no. They'll be shitty.
I mean, I feel I'm more familiar with them at this point, so I'll just.
I'm not at all. Actually, there's a trailer for Scream 4 at the beginning of the Blu-ray that we
saw,
watched.
And I'm like, oh, Tim better skip this.
I was really pissed off. I was
you
like,
actually
no!
watched it?
I mean, I got through it, but I've
hit the chapter forward button, man.
I didn't know I could until it was like halfway through. I was like, fuck. I basically just averted myself.
I literally thought, I'm like, Tim better hit the chapter forward button.
And well, what it made me realize is I 1,000% have not seen that movie.
Okay.
I had no idea.
Blah, 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 blah. You're plugging your ears.
I mean, really?
Great. Well, first we got 3 to get to first. But before we get to 3, unless there's anything else you want to say on Scream 2, what did work, we got to see if there's anything that did not work.
No, I think, it's a good movie.
Great. All right, here we go. Scream 2, what did not work?
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
I just had that one little tiny thing where it sounds like that for you, the movie explained it. I didn't pick up on it, but I was just so frustrated when she didn't grab the mask off of Ghostface in the car. Like, you can't have her do it in that moment, so I get it's really hard to play, but they could have done something of just like,
I agree.
He moves a little bit and they run or something, but like, even her saying, "Oh, I gotta go back. It'll just take a minute." I'm like, no, it takes 2 seconds, and you could have done it like without slowing down at all. It's just silly, but I just
there are some contrivances in that scene that made me just kind of go, "What the hell?" So the whole thing of her not being able to get the door open, it's like unlock unlock the doors in back from front. That's how cop cars work.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like we all know that. We've seen that a lot.
I was willing to forgive that one just because
like,
I did love them climbing over.
I did too, but like if you're gonna do it, you know, you gotta give it a little bit more.
Right, like the back doors.
It's not working.
It's broken. Yeah, whatever.
No problem. They kind of just skim by that.
His
and also, like you're saying,
his hand is on the lock or something.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Like you're saying, if she, like when she's sitting next to him, have her. I mean, she does reach for it, right?
Yeah, this is
mask?
so frustrating. Why she didn't? Because she's like, just don't do it. Don't. And I'm like, why? Do it.
Yeah, like just have his head nod. Like have him move. That'd be a really good jump scare, and then everybody freezes, and he doesn't keep moving. Then it's even more scary because maybe he's faking it. Maybe he is going to grab it. Like they missed a couple little opportunities to give us a scare and a suspense while explaining why she didn't do it in that moment.
The horn honk was so good, though.
The horn honk was great. Yeah, so I was just like, come on. My only other thing is I just think that there wasn't enough Sydney. Like, there's felt like a whole chunk of the movie where we kind of never really got in with her. And then suddenly we're with her at the theater. And I was like, wait, what? I didn't even know she was an acting student. Like that seemed like it was out of order or something. Like maybe there's a scene missing that didn't make the cut of her and the director early on.
Even that, I mean, it's just, I think could be a way of how the scenes are done too, where it's like, you do have all these great sort of more extroverted supporting actors, roles, characters. So like, you know, Jerry O'Connell singing up on the tables, it didn't feel like, you know, it could have been played a way that was like, this is on Sydney and how she is feeling about trusting him or not. But it just felt more like it was about showcasing Jerry O'Connell singing, which is fine. I mean, I loved it, but I'm just trying to think of maybe why you're getting that, which I totally see.
Yeah, it's hard because you don't want to, you know, you want to give everybody kind of their fair, you know, kind of amount of time for us to care enough about whether or not they might be the killer or whether or not they might die. Like, we want to weave in those those subplot stories enough. But, like, this movie, I think the one criticism I really have is that it gets dangerously close to introducing the killer and then never seeing him again until the end. And you do not want to suffer from that. I think that's cheap. You know, we do get a few scenes with Timothy Olyphant throughout, but we don't quite get enough. It's a really fine line to be on. Like it's you got to navigate it delicately.
Thought it was still fair game when it was him.
Pretty good. But like, I'm not saying they did it wrong. I'm saying they came dangerously close to doing it wrong.
Yeah, he was in it a little less.
If he had one fewer scenes, I'd be pissed off.
I think they actually realized that in the editing, and there was a scene where he's sort of commiserating with Sydney, and it's just the two of them. I want to say at the police station.
It's in the hospital. Maybe it is the police station.
I think they kind of added...
No, it's in the hospital when Jerry O'Connell's getting bandaged
Right.
up.
They added that in really late in the game where they said that was just like a totally like fabricated set that they threw together just to put that scene together.
I mean, that it's necessary. If that didn't happen,
they did
tough.
The same thing with Laurie Metcalf's character where she shows up right after the fake Dewey death scene of, you know, of Gail getting attacked, where she's like already out there at the van, and that's Gail runs out to her and grabs the mic. She almost wasn't going to be there for that moment, but that was important I think, to have her there too.
Yeah, well, they made the right choice because that's a tricky thing. You got to stay in touch with the bad guys without showing your hand too much, and that's hard. But you know, you got to do it.
Right. So wait,
I don't really have anything else.
So that really was a thing that worked because they did it. And so that was.
I guess.
Like, so that was just a sort of stern. Got a little close there, guys. It wasn't even
slap on the wrist.
Worked.
Yeah. Yeah, outside of that, I think for all of the talk of the kills being bigger and a higher body count, it seems like kind of right on par. It didn't seem like there was that much more body count, was there?
Well, just you wait for 3 and 4 because there's more screen to come.
Great. I don't know. Other than that, I don't know. I
don't know. I thought it was pretty well
to complain about.
I thought it was pretty well paced, just as far as like amount of kills, frequency of kills when they happened, amount with Sydney. I don't know. I liked it.
I could have just used a little more Sydney. Like
I could have used more.
Something.
I could have used. I agree. I could use more her, but I wouldn't want to do it at the expense of the pacing that's there.
That's true. No, that's true. Yeah, I don't know how you what you could do to make me want feel more satisfied in that realm, because like
it's more like just her subjective, just more close-ups with her. Just I don't know.
Yeah, because we get close to it where she's getting a phone call and she's kind of like, "Fuck you," like we see. Here's the thing: like in the first movie, remember. We established she's super fucking smart. She's ahead of the game. She's smarter than everybody. Like, we love her for that. I think that's what I was kind of missing a little bit. We used Dewey and Gale as the kind of the detectives of we're going to figure out who it is more in this one. And that's cool. I enjoyed that stuff. But it disconnects us from Sydney.
She is playing victim a bit much more. I mean... or just playing, because of course she's always the victim, but no, as far as maybe that is why I just got so excited about her having to make that choice at the end with the boyfriend was because we hadn't seen her have to do that much up until that point. I do love at the beginning when she like the first thing that happens when stuff starts to go down, I gotta talk to Randy, Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, that's it really for me though. It's
great. All right. Final section here for Scream Dois. Things of note.
Things of note!
This should be interesting.
Quiz time, Tim.
Okay, I'm ready. Hit me.
All right. This is some dismembering horror quiz time. I know you love to do it and I love to give it. So 2 actors in this film have appeared in previous films of ours. Who are those 2 actors and which films did they appear in that we've covered?
Whew, okay. Shit. Wow. Man, I don't...
Should I give you... Okay, I'll give you hints. They're both male.
Okay.
One of them is older. One of them is younger. And the younger one appeared in flashback scenes of the film that we watched.
Jesus. I can't even remember what old dudes are in that. Well, is it the director guy?
Ding, ding, ding.
Oh, he is. Well, yeah, what was he in? That's right. Fuck was he in? Shit. Tell me.
He played a doctor in it, as in like at a psychiatric ward.
Wait, he's not in asylum, is he?
No.
Psychiatric ward. Oh my God.
With Sam Neill.
Oh, he's in... Wait, oh God. What's the... Which Sam Neill movie did we watch? I have a horrible memory now.
I mean, we've already had this. We've had 2 Sam Neill in descent into Lovecraftian horror films.
That's right.
And we're doing the 3rd one at some point. We're doing Event Horizon.
In the Mouth of Madness?
Correct. David Warner, who was the theater director guy in this one, was a doctor in the Mouth of in the Mouth of Madness.
Okay.
Now, the younger actor from Scream 2, can you remember which film we watched where he appeared in flashback scenes? It It was the flashback scenes that told the story of an important haunted object, a magical object.
Jesus. Oh my God. No.
And we were like, why is he in this movie? He hardly does anything. We had a lot of questions for this movie.
Oh God. I mean, that could be any of them. I can't even remember movies that we watched. Jesus.
This item that he was involved with would grant your wishes.
What?
I just told you the answer there, Tim. It was Wish Upon. Jerry O'Connell.
Oh my God.
He was like, remember?
No. Wait, he's in the Oh my God, yeah. Wait, what are those flashbacks about?
It's just some stupid thing where he's like the last guy who had the box.
Yeah, that's right. He's like the doctor or like the lawyer or something that had bought the box. He's like some rich asshole who bought the box.
Yeah.
Oh my God. What the hell? Well, just goes to show you.
Well, yeah.
My brain... I haven't had anything to eat today, so maybe that's it.
Not your best game, but...
No. That was horrible.
But we have faith in you.
It was good content though. Just then,
keep you on your toes. Great.
God.
Well, for some things to note, I did watch the director's or the commentary, which had Wes Craven, the producer, and the editor. For kind of our little like trivia bit, things to note. We also just have things we were thinking about that wouldn't fit into what worked, what didn't. Tim, tell me if there's anything to this thought that I had where when we touch on in this show what horror is, what its place in our world is. And it was hard not to dwell on that with the opening scene, especially with the sort of, people seemingly celebrate the violence on screen, get excited about it. But I think tell me if this makes sense, this metaphor. Horror, it's a roller coaster into darkness. It's not that people are screaming because they are happy people are getting killed, but I think it's a communal, can be individual way to sort of go off into the deep end and do it in a way that involves it's screaming. Of fear, and you can look at it. How we laugh, things we don't understand or that are new or different in the face too. So
I agree with that.
I just had that thought when watching the group, the packed theater. They make point saying it's a sold out theater. That they aren't. There's a difference between celebrating a death and celebrating death.
Right. Yeah, I think we've talked about this in various ways before, right? Like the roller coaster metaphor is actually really a good one because what's happening when you get on a roller coaster is that you are in a controlled way getting the same chemical sort of release of all sorts of, dopamine and like, the sort of the fear reaction that you get and the closeness to death in a controlled state allows you to appreciate your mortality and the fact that you're still alive, and that's cathartic. Mm-hmm. And I think horror is a version of that same construct.
Well, it's interesting because
why we scream, right? You are releasing this sort of cathartic "I'm still alive."
Right.
Feeling.
No, 100%. But like what the context of this film does, where they are essentially when they're watching Stab, they're essentially just us watching the first Scream movie, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So rather than just being about catharsis, I think it's about saying like what this points out in the first scene. It's saying the first Scream is a roller coaster we have been on. We have confronted it together. And now we're going to go a little further thanks to having already gone on that first roller coaster.
Totally.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's the the previously on
Yeah.
that allows us to both be on board but also caught up and ready for the next episode.
Right.
Without feeling whatever, it doesn't feel trite. It's actually really it's done in such a good way that it makes us feel even more accepting of the things to come.
Yeah.
Go,
Absolutely.
oh, shit.
Yeah. Well, it's
yeah.
all, I say a roller coaster into darkness because we're talking horror films, but it can also just be a roller coaster drop into the unknown is really what's happening here, which is art, in general. Great.
I just had a realization. Loomis being her name, like that's a reference.
Of course.
It didn't really occur to me in the first one.
They were watching Halloween in the first one.
I know. There's another thing that I saw that I thought was interesting. What was it? I don't remember where I saw this. Shit. All right. Well, never mind then, I guess. That's good content too. Me looking for a thing.
Always my favorite. So the commentary, it was there's some stuff in it, but it was so funny because they are mostly just like, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, it brings back a lot of good memories. And they just they went on listing, like basically they just put everyone in the movie. Oh, here's Courtney Cox's sister and her kids, and oh, here's our deep. I started keeping track. Some fun ones at the just the first 10 minutes, let's say. Nev Campbell's stand-in was the ticket taker on the outside of the theater. There was a contest to be in Scream 2. Wow. And that contest winner, she was the one on the inside handing out the masks and gets the line. That was fun. The guy, when she takes a break to go get the popcorn, guy selling the popcorn is the director of photography. And then we have Kevin Williamson himself, the writer, is the talk show host interviewing Cotton Weary when you see him on the TV at the beginning.
Jesus Christ.
And then it just goes on and on. It's really funny.
That's cool.
But real family affair.
Oh, yeah. You know what I really like about this movie is trying to, like we talked about, figure out where it was filmed, like different things. You mentioned
I kept
the Vista.
Right, whenever I see bricks, I'm just like, oh, it's USC, but it was...
it's not.
It was Atlanta, right? So it
was
both
both
of it.
A place called Agnes Scott College, which is outside of Atlanta, and UCLA.
Yeah, for a lot of the interiors. Good old UCLA.
Which surprised me because, you see that brick, and if you've been to USC, that's just where your brain goes.
I think all the brick stuff must have been in Atlanta, and then the interiors. I think you're right. The interiors were.
You know
UCLA.
what I wondered, and I'm sure there's a way to look this up. There was a movie with Jeremy Piven that took place on a college campus where he's like an RA who's been there forever, and I don't remember the name of it, but I wonder if it's not the same campus because that was about the same time, and it looked so familiar to me. But what I like is stuff that's in LA.
Yeah,
it gets me excited. So the movie theater, the exterior, is a theater that is famous theater in South Pasadena that closed down a long time ago. I think it was, I don't know when it closed, in probably the late 90s or early 2000s it closed, and it's just been sitting there, and it's like dilapidated. It's a beautiful building. It's one of those, it's like a single theater, or single projector theater, I guess.
Yeah, single screen theaters, yeah.
Right. And I looked it up because I was like, oh shit, I was always under the impression, or somebody told me, that they were just going to demolish it. It turns out that it's been bought by a developer who's going to try to turn it back into an old theater.
Cool.
What do you do? Do a full renovation to what it was originally meant to be. I fucking hope that happens because it's such a cool theater.
Then it'd be right next to the video store where we rent our Blu-rays.
It is.
At.
It's probably. Oh, I don't know. It's about 4 blocks from there.
Yeah, and South Pass will really be where it's at.
Yep.
Can swing by the Halloween house too.
I know. I always wanted to go into that theater because I figured it was haunted, but it was locked up.
Well, maybe you'll have your chance.
I know.
So Wes Craven, just sort of down the list, a few little fun things from the commentary. When they were talking about Jada Pinkett at the beginning, Wes Craven said, "Yeah, she sent me a complete set of steak knives for Christmas that year." A good sense of humor.
Jada.
And Wes Craven, he just seemed kind of like tickled and proud of, we're trying to like just really overanalyze here the meta aspect, what's going on in that opening scene. He just said, yeah, it is a horrible sort of trick. Let's take a look at what we're all enjoying here. Force us to look at it. It was interesting. This is an example of where it's pretty cool. This came out in 97. It came out less than a year after its first Scream.
Oh, that was something I was wondering. I couldn't remember what the time difference was between them. That's crazy.
So this was really pretty rushed, gun-ho. They were getting scenes, written like the day of, then revising it, working it all together to figure it out.
Fuck.
But it was cool. I think this is one of those examples where because they just sounded like such a tight, smart team who'd worked together before and just were smart and love the material and what they were working with in the world, they're figuring it out when they had to, just delivered. And
that's cool.
And in a lot of ways made for maybe a few more better moments, where an example was apparently that scene when Omar Epps goes in and gets killed in the bathroom, that Kevin Williamson had just written it as he comes into the bathroom and Wes makes it scary. But that's so smart because let Wes Craven look at the bathroom, look at the scene, look at the context, and figure out what's best. And it just was great because it plugged in. Do you remember he puts his ear up close to it because he hears this weird whispering, that whispering stuff. It's so Hills Have Eyesy, it's made me think that's totally a Wes Craven thing. And it makes sense. He came up with that.
Yeah, that's funny.
That was fun hearing in that specific example. Sarah Michelle Gellar did her own stunts because she was doing Buffy at the time. At least did her stunts for that. So that was her jumping off the building into a big pad.
Wow.
Already said, there were different fake endings, including one where Dewey was the killer. Last thing I had, this was from the Wikipedia, but I just thought was kind of a fun, more example we like to bring up when it's there. The MPAA and just the kind of the mystery that is them. So they went in with, I'll just read it. Eager to avoid the same experience on Scream 2, Craven attempted to manipulate the MPAA by sending them a version of the film that had been edited to focus on and enhance the gore and violence present beyond what they actually wanted in the film, including reusing a clip of Omar Epps' character being stabbed in the ear, so it was like he's being stabbed 3 times. Instead of they only wanted it once though. Extended scene of Randy's death that showed his throat being slashed. Certainly didn't even want to show that in the end. Craven's reasoning was that the parts of the film they wished to keep would be more acceptable when viewed with the enhanced violence, basically so then that way we can cut it down to what we want. So, force them to remove the footage they already didn't want to keep. However, the MPAA, to Wes Craven's surprise, granted Scream 2 an R rating for the more violent cut, as they believed the underlying message of the film was significant enough to warrant the violence.
Oh my God.
Pick the day, right?
It's just so, they're such a weird organization.
Is that just funny though?
Of course. It's of course.
That you'd feel like the only way to get what you want is that is a smart strategy where you have to manipulate the situation, but it just points out how silly it is when you feel
smart.
Like you have to manipulate it.
I've run into an issue with getting approvals for things before where, you've got in the script that you've written for the pleasure of reading, you embellish things in a screenplay a lot of the time so that the read is good. because you know you're going to be handing that off to people and you want them to get in the sort of mindset of what you're trying to accomplish. But like, you also run the risk if you hand that embellished script over to get an approval for like whatever, you know, if you want like a permit or you want like, you know, a location approval, and they see, oh, you have, you know, you've got this scene where it's like described as something elaborate, but you know, in actuality, it's going to be really simply shot and you're not going to have this big over the top thing. You're just going to have a couple people. The reader often will think, holy shit, this needs like a stunt coordinator. It's going to have, you know, what are the prop like weapons looking like? What, like, how many vehicles are going to be involved? How many, like, do I need a pyro guy to show up? Do I need the FSO officer to, you know, the fire safety officer to like show up? Like, you need all those things, and that changes the cost of your permitting and blah, blah, blah. And all the while you're like, oh, no, that's just in the script. Like, we don't actually want to do any of those things. We just wanted the read to be good. So you learn, like, at times you have to actually, like, sometimes you have to really cut out embellishments in the script so that you can get your approvals, because you don't want them to think you're doing things that you know you're not going to be doing, because they'll just not give you the permit. They'll be like, no way. You don't have this or that or the other thing to accomplish this. So it's like, it's a weird, tricky game sometimes when you're trying, like, these organizations, they are gatekeepers in a lot of ways, and trying to navigate that can be a headache, to say the least.
Well, indeed. Was that all you had for things of note? Because that's all I had.
Yeah, I don't have anything else. Oh, I mean, I remember the year this came out. Like, I remember...
You remember 1997?
Yeah, man, I graduated from high school. Jesus Christ.
Do you remember?
No, I don't. Well, it's just so funny because, remember, I had seen the first one in the late winter. I think it was February or March of 97. And this came out in December of 97. Like, that's fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Same year as Tomorrow Never Dies. That helps me picture the year. The Fifth Element, Jackie Brown, Liar, Liar, Contact, Mimic, Dante's Peak, Batman and Robin.
Oh,
I Know
God.
What You Did Last Summer, In and Out, Volcano, The Borrowers, Chasing Amy, Anaconda, As Good as It Gets, Lost World, Mouse Hunt, one of my favorites, LA Confidential, The Relic. Anyway, just paint a picture. Funny. Kind of really, like, just saying those movies gives us like a, oh yeah, that year kind of feel, you know?
It sure does. I went, this is embarrassing. I went to Batman and Robin with my friends in full cosplay.
Tim. Who are you?
I was Robin.
Yes, of course.
And my buddy fucking like spray painted himself silver to be like Mr. Free. It was
this all
so
like
uncomfortable.
Is this all like your choir boy buddies?
No, this was my like high school pals, like just the movie geek pals that I was friends with.
Right.
And we had, you know, we had everybody. We had a Bane, we had a Batman, we had a Robin, we had a Poison Ivy, we had a Mr. Freeze, and we showed up on opening night at the big multiplex in Rochester at the time was called Tinseltown. And we showed up there thinking that a lot of people would be also doing this, and we were like the only people who had dressed up for this.
Yeah, and it's not a Star Wars movie, man.
I felt immediately so embarrassed and uncomfortable. It was really bad.
Tim.
Oh man, I worked hard on that costume too.
I mean, today there's people do it a lot for the Marvel movies, the Star Warses, but
it just wasn't a thing. I don't know what possessed us, like why we thought that people would do that. Also, that movie is fucking trash.
Right.
I remember walking out of there being like, I dressed up for that.
Well, Tim, that was a good last thing of note and an opposite
1997.
Opposite of being able to recommend something. So would you like to recommend Dead something, as it is that portion of the show?
I would, since we're in October and it's somewhat apropos. I just watched Coco for the first time, and it's so good. It made me cry a little bit. It's really great. You should watch it.
Great. Yeah, I like it.
It's great. All around, it's great.
Mine was my recommendation this week, Mortal Kombat Legends, Scorpion's Revenge.
What?
It's a 2020 film. It's an animated film. It's like a hard R Mortal Kombat animated film. And it was just like tickled my 13-year-old fancy, I'll tell you what, of like being a Mortal Kombat fan of those games and just like doing the exact kind of fun story I'd want of like going all out and just having the fight scenes, having the characters being super bloody and intense, the deaths, because it's a cartoon. You can do it. I was just surprised. I'm like, you know what? It's gotten okay. I'm just going to watch it. It was like a perfect Saturday afternoon kind of watch, you know. Mortal Kombat Legends, Scorpion's Revenge.
You're bringing it all back to that era, my late high school years. Do you want to know how many times I saw Mortal Kombat, the movie?
How many?
In the theater? Take a stab.
Haha. 5.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. That's the most I've ever seen a movie in theaters.
5. That movie is fucking horrible.
But it's so awesome. Like when you're that age, like
what would I have been?
Right,
I guess I was sick. I was 16.
I was probably like, I don't know, 9 years young. It was a perfect age for me. I tell you what, too. I remember when that theme song came on. Every one of our generation, this is not novel for people of our ilk and age, reminiscing fondly. But 5 times, Tim. Wow.
5 times. 3 times in one weekend.
Well, Tim, then I think my recommendation of Mortal Kombat Legends, Scorpion's Revenge might be up your alley.
It probably will be.
Great. All right. Well, we aren't going to pull an episode because we know what comes after Scream 2, and that's what, Tim?
Stab 2.
Indeed. And then what is Stab 2 in? Stab 2 is in Scream 3. I forget. I know there's another Stab movie going on, but
I'm convinced all I remember is like a barn or something like that.
I feel like that's...
Is it a warehouse?
I feel like that's 4.
No way.
Scream 3 is very... I remember... It's like very... This is the one that I happen to watch the most.
A farmhouse? I don't know.
It's very Hollywood-y stuff. Hollywood-centric
Oh, maybe
stuff.
it's a set.
Yes.
Maybe it's a set. That's what it is.
There is indeed a set scene.
Okay.
Well, you
I've
get to
seen
watch it tonight. You get to watch it soon. So
I know.
Find out soon enough. Great. Well, until we're back for Scream 3 from 2000, still directed by Wes Craven. Hey-oh, cool. Well, you can find us wherever you found us. Hope you're enjoying your spooky October if you're listening to these live. Anything else, Tim?
Mm-mm.
Then all we got to say is we do mean it. Thank you so much for being here.
That's right. And we will see you next time. Goodbye.